Well, thank you all for taking the time. This is our third webinar. The first one we covered was last year, the last school year, Women in Accounting. Last semester, we covered your career opportunities, and we felt the timing of that was aligned with when you were thinking about the opportunities that you were interviewing for. And now that everyone has a job or is in the final stages of landing that job, whether it be an internship or a full-time position, we thought we'd talk you through what it's like when you actually start to enter the workforce. And the other skills, besides the technical skills that, that you need, the other skills that you're going to need when you start to move throughout your career in the various opportunities that are ahead of you. So that's what we're going to focus on. We know that we've got a hard stop at, I believe, noon your time. So we'll jump right into it very quickly. Jennifer's going to talk about day one. So the day that you step into your new job, what are some of the skills, the softer skills that you should be considering and really start to think about and develop in those early days. Joe Apke is going to be talking about the key soft skills that you'll need as you start moving throughout your career. Certain skills will become more important later on in your career, and it's good that you start developing them early on. And then Dave's going to be talking about diversity and inclusion, which if you don't recognize it yet, you will recognize it when you start to, when you enter the workforce, that diversity and inclusion are critical to a great functioning organization, to a great functioning team. And Dave's going to talk about the value that you get out of a diverse and inclusive work environment and team that you'll be working on. So once we get through those, and we're going to actually just go from speaker to speaker, just given the webinar setup. We'll then jump into a Q&A and we'll wrap up and let you guys go. So with that being said, Jennifer, why don't I turn it over to you?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, so I've been asked to talk, like Joe said, about what happens on day one. So obviously this is going to depend on what kind of firm you go to, if it's big or small, the types of projects that you get. But I think just so you know, my background is I started at a large accounting firm as a first year, went through there through a supervising senior, then moved to a mid-sized firm. So I've kind of seen both those, from the start position as well as from the supervisory position of what people who are having new hires come in, what kind of skills we want to see them have. And so I've kind of grouped it into like 5 categories, and I'll try to talk quickly because I know that Joe and Dave have a lot of good things to say. But the first thing that I think is really important are verbal communication skills. I mean, day one, you're going to be talking to clients, you're going to be talking to team members. So the way that you talk to them is really important. You always want to be relatable, but not waste people's time. So it's kind of a fine line of, wanting to make sure that you communicate with people professionally, but also not be cold or short. And I think that the way that you can kind of do that is to take advantage of building relationships with people. So anytime you have opportunities in your first year career to, go to coffee or go have drinks with someone, it's a good idea to take those opportunities. And I know Joe's going to talk about networking, but when you have a relationship with someone outside of work, it makes communicating at work a lot easier. And so just kind of giving that to you there. Also, you want to be able to be comfortable with pauses or silence so you can evaluate what people are saying to you. I think a lot of times as a first year we say, okay, go talk to that person and ask them questions, and you're like, okay, and you have your list of questions and you're kind of nervous and you go and you're like, yes, and you write down everything they say, but you don't really have time to stop and think about what they're saying to you and ask follow-on questions. So just kind of taking your time, as obviously you don't want to waste their time, but making sure you're critically thinking about the answers that you're getting when you're talking to people so that you can make sense of what they're saying to you. And I think Joe is also going to talk about this later, but public speaking never killed anybody. And I know it's not everyone's favorite, but anytime that you have an opportunity to practice your public speaking skills, you should definitely do it, because that's going to help you, whether you're in a client meeting or a team meeting, to confidently present your ideas and to be comfortable sharing those in a group setting. So definitely anytime you have an opportunity to do that, I think you should do it. So the second thing I want to talk about a little bit is writing skills. that is very important in your career in public accounting. And I think obviously being able to express your thoughts cohesively and making sure you're proofreading stuff, and even emails, proofreading emails. Even in my stage of my career, a lot of times my introduction to clients is emails. So, taking into consideration, that's your introduction to someone. So setting an appropriate tone. And this will probably go along with what Dave is talking about too, about thinking about who your audience is. The way that sometimes people communicate over email sometimes can be harsher, just kind of consider that as you're emailing people. Also make sure you're comfortable with writing out your research or your explanation of your procedures, writing those memos. The third thing, and I think this is probably the thing I want to talk about the most, is what I call keeping the attitude of a student. So as you think about, you can't get your license in public accounting until you've had some experience. Think about like medical school. You go to medical school for 4 years, and then you have to actually be an intern and be a resident until you can get your license to practice. It's kind of the same thing with accounting. You don't really know what you're doing until you actually do it. And so I think that you come to your job with a lot of great knowledge and skills, but you still need to be proactive about seeking those learning opportunities at work and outside of work. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of what that means. So whether you're in a specific industry or whether you're in public accounting, studying the industry and seeing how you can add value. If you're aware of the current events that are going on in the industry, you can bring a lot of value to your clients. It helps you understand their business. So making sure you understand the business of what they're doing. When you're assigned a task, you want to spend a little bit of time figuring it out on your own, but don't spin your wheels. Nobody wants you to waste your time. So it's okay to ask questions, to get feedback. It's also important to really understand how the work that you're doing fits in with what everyone else on your team is doing. So if you don't understand that, then you should find out, ask the questions or do some research on your own to find out how that piece fits in with the bigger picture. Because the first years that bring value are the people that understand what they're doing in relation to the whole, and also can come up with ideas to make it better. So what the next thing I say is kind of looking to get an A, right? If you're in school and you're like, I want to make this the best project possible, and you want all of your work to be like that, right? Make the best project and see also how can I value add to what I'm doing to my clients and to my team. So with that kind of comes a balance of confidence and humility, right? Understanding that you have something to add because you're fresh out of school. So you may have technical computer data analytics that the people you're working with, those skills that they don't have, but also they have a lot of experience and things you can teach you. So kind of keeping that attitude of a student, but also bringing what you have to the table. So the last kind of two things are interrelated. I want to talk about being a team player and what that means, the skills that you want to have. And I think those are really just being engaged with your team, being excited about the work that you're doing, being proactive of looking for ways that you can help out your team. And also, this kind of goes back to working relationships, looking for understanding the preferences of people around you. Like, is texting your manager appropriate communication, or would they prefer an email or a phone call? Just making sure that you understand that those working relationships are important, and fostering those working relationships inside and outside of work. Obviously, the positive attitude goes a really long way. So, sometimes the hours are long and it can be a little bit overwhelming, but you want to have fun at your job. And so I think looking for ways to make your work exciting and interesting and fun are really important. And part of that is having good working relationships with people around you, but also really making your job meaningful. You're going to spend more time at your job than you will with your family. So you want to make sure that that work is engaging. And if you have a positive attitude, it really helps make the work more enjoyable. So like I said, I think that Joe and Dave are going to talk about a little bit more as you go further on in your career, like the networking is important and also in understanding diversity. But I think these are kind of the things that I would say would be the number one things you should think about your first day to the first year on your job.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Somebody give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. So appreciate this opportunity to talk to you. Jennifer's done a nice job of introducing some topics. some of mine actually are quite an overlap with some of the concepts that she talked about. But hopefully a lot of these things are some observations that, you know, you carry with you not only on your first day, but throughout your career. A little bit about myself, as it was mentioned, I'm an audit partner at Deloitte. I've been with Deloitte, frankly, longer than any of you have been alive, probably. I went to actually school in Illinois and started with Deloitte right out of school, and I worked a lot out of Chicago and St. Louis. And then did 2 years in Amsterdam on a global assignment. It was a fantastic opportunity, and then landed here in Boston and have been part of our technology and our life science practice, serving kind of public clients as well as the early stage companies as well, trying to take them public. So I've also got a role in our quality group, which, you know, talking about soft skills, you don't often equate the technical side of accounting with soft skills, but in order to be successful, I think no matter, you know, what your job responsibilities are, you need a lot of these skills. So what I thought about talking with you today is first about just what it means to be in a profession, as well as what it means to be a professional. And then a little bit around networking. And then lastly, just to kind of reiterate what Jennifer talked about, which is the importance of hard work and a good attitude. So if you think about what it means to be in a profession, I think, you know, it's a little bit a squishy topic, but it's really, I've tried to break it down or boil it down to as simple as, you know, this isn't just a job, right? You're not viewed as just a laborer. You are viewed as a professional. When you step into someone's office, whether you're in a role like David's at ABC or you're in a public accounting firm, when you step into someone's office, whether you like it or not, you're taken very seriously, and what you say matters. And so having that kind of cachet right out of college may feel a little awkward at first, but it's an important thing to recognize that you perhaps have as much or more experience or more knowledge than the people that you're interacting with. So you need to take that responsibility seriously. And I think it reflects upon you, not only how you carry yourself, but, you know, the words you choose, the messages that you share, whether they're verbal or written. So that's a very important part of being a professional. Obviously, dress is important. Today's world is much less formal of an accounting world than when I started in public accounting. I've got jeans on today. Most of the people in the office do. Most of my clients here in Boston are jeans, but you know, you also have to consider that you are representing yourself and the firm. So choose your dress appropriately. Communications, Jennifer hit upon that. I think that's really, really important, not to be lazy in those communications. Again, whether it's verbal or written, it, you know, it reflects upon you and the message that you're trying to share. If it's littered with spelling mistakes, if it's littered with incomplete sentences, or you can't articulate your position, you're not going to get the result that you're seeking, for sure. And I think, you know, particularly in a world today where people don't communicate live, the tone of messages in text and email is very important. I know, particularly between my wife and myself, or my kids and myself, the tone of my messages sometimes throws them off. And so I have to always be cognizant of that as I communicate with my clients and coworkers and staff. So, you know, a couple other little things: be on time. It drives clients crazy when you're not on time. Their time is valuable, and your time is valuable. Everybody's valuable. So be on time. And if you're not going to be on time, you know, please call ahead and make sure that those who are expecting you can be aware of that. Just a little thing is around just showing up prepared for meetings. As a young staff person coming out of into an engagement or coming into a new role, you're not going to be expected to know much, but you are going to be expected to remember what you've been told. And so come prepared, and bring paper with you. I went into a meeting recently with a young staff person, and they walked in with nothing in their hands. And I thought, are you really ready for this? If you're not going to, you know, take notes or be willing to actually engage in the conversation. So I think that's an important element, even though it's just a little minor thing. So a little bit on networking. You know, I don't think it matters what stage of your development. I've been doing this, as I said, a long time, and continuing to develop my network is as important to me today as it was 25 plus years ago when I started this. And so that's an important thing to recognize. And you probably have already recognized, you know, in the junior core, it was important for you to develop a little network of teachers and fellow students and people who shared your interest and your values. And that helped you be successful in the program. So continuing that into your career as you start is obviously very important. I think within, you know, a lot of the words I speak and my message today is in the context of a Big Four accounting firm. That's because that's my perspective on life. But these apply, I think, no matter where you are. But so if you think about some examples of your network in a firm anyway, you're going to come in, like in Boston, there's 80 plus 90 students every year that join us. And so you're part of this class. That's your first network in the firm. And you might then branch out and join some industry groups, maybe financial services or commercial practice or technology is a group I practice in. So take advantage of those opportunities. Probably your most intimate network would be your engagement teams, the people that you're going to work directly with, again, whether it's in public accounting or in a company. Those people you talk to on a day-to-day basis are your immediate network, and knowing how to maximize the value out of that network is really important. And then I know within Deloitte, and I'm sure everywhere, there's lots of different opportunities to choose, you know, who you affiliate with. Within Deloitte, we have business resource groups, we have social groups, you have your friends, and then, you know, a really important part is the alumni network, both the BYU alumni network as well as people come into public accounting or come into a company and then they go off and continue their career elsewhere. It's very important to keep those contacts alive. Actually, David and I worked together a long time ago at Deloitte, and you know, it's been fun to reconnect with him and keep that relationship alive. So it is important to keep those intimate contacts you have at work live as you kind of start separating ways. It's the real value of a network. So the last thing I wanted to just mention is just the value of hard work and having a good attitude. Jennifer hit upon it. Anytime anybody asks me that kind of typical interview question is, well, how do I distinguish myself when I come to work at your company? It really gets down for me is to the value and the demonstrating that you take pride in your work, that you own it, no matter what it is, right? Particularly in public accounting, there's lots of day-to-day tasks that perhaps aren't so exciting or glamorous, but it's important to take those seriously and to own those entirely. This last busy season, I worked with this young guy, and I think no matter how many times he took our lunch orders most days, and no matter how many times he took our lunch order, for whatever reason, mine was always wrong, and he really took it personally. Like every day, if it was wrong, he would just complain. He would apologize profusely because he knew it was a reflection on him, even though I knew it had nothing to do with him. So it's important just to, no matter what your task is, take pride in it, own it, and do it with a good attitude. Because if you can demonstrate you can do the little stuff, you're going to get the trust to do the big stuff, and you know, continue to get those opportunities that are going to make you successful. So I think that element of a good attitude goes a long way. You know, I know as BYU alum, you already know how to work hard, but I think that's equally important is, you know, being willing to take on hard tasks, put in the hours that you need to be successful. People recognize that right away when they know, even though maybe that result isn't the best, they know you're really trying hard and you're giving it all. That goes a long way. So hard work and a good attitude for me really just characterize the people that I want to be surrounding myself with and who I want on my team. And my last point is just to be proactive. You've got to figure out what you want and to articulate what you want, and then figure out a way to go to it. You know, oftentimes people come to leaders and they say, well, you know, this isn't going well for me. And you, as a leader, you can listen to that conversation pretty easily. But what is really impactful is when someone says to you, this isn't going well for me. Here's a solution. Can you help me implement it? So being proactive and coming to the table with solutions, again, whether they're kind of big problems or small problems, if you come with a solution, you're going to end up getting a much more, likely result or outcome that's pleasing to you. And frankly, that helps everybody be successful. So I will say some of the best experiences I've had in my career are perhaps things that I wasn't initially 100% engaged in or wanted to be involved in, but they've really worked out well. And that's where I think all of these kind of elements of, just trying hard and demonstrating a good attitude and maximizing the value of the network that you've been tossed into has just been very, very rewarding. So I know that you guys are all poised for great success. I've met a lot of you, and I'm looking forward to kind of any questions that you might have at the end of this. David, you want to take it from here? You're on mute.
All right, unmuted now. Can you hear me? All right, excellent. Thanks, Joe, Jen, good work. So I'm Dave Haskett. Good to meet you through the web. So a little background on myself. I was Deloitte for 10 years, all over the country, started in Arizona, then went out to Connecticut. That's where Joe and I worked together a little bit, trying to answer questions when Joe would have for me. Then in Cincinnati, I worked on Procter & Gamble. I was an auditor on Procter & Gamble. After 10 years, I got a call from Disney, and they said, come on out. And I went out in February. When I left Cincinnati, it was 8 degrees, and landed in Burbank, and it was 82, and I said yes. So it was pretty easy for me. Been with Disney now 12 years. It goes fast. I've had 5 different assignments since I've been at the Walt Disney Company, a bunch of different things. And most recently, I'm the controller for the media group. So that includes ABC Television, the Disney Channel, Freeform, and as some of you may have heard this week, we bought this small company called Fox, or a portion of Fox. And so FX Channel, National Geographic, and then their big TV studios, all the content makers for the Fox broadcast company, all the TV studios that make all that, they're coming over as well. So this is literally day 2 of that acquisition. And we're meeting a lot of new people. So in diversity inclusion is very meaningful these days, making sure we have teams that feel included, for sure. So the topic I was given and I really like is diversity inclusion, and really a couple things we're going to talk about, what it is, why it's important, and then how we can encourage diversity inclusion within our own jobs and functions. So when you hear diversity, you think about it's age, gender, religion, race. That's first thing you think of when you hear diversity, but it's that plus more. It's also, it's personality types, it's socioeconomic backgrounds, it's communication styles, learning styles. It's just the fact that everybody's different. That is diversity at its core. And a lot of the keys to being inclusive are actually a lot of the stuff that Joe talked about, and Jennifer. At the heart of it, if you think about being a team player, that is inclusion. How do you build your team? How do you build a team? You have to be inclusive. So anyway, just that's how I would think about it to start. Obviously, this topic is huge. There's a lot of stuff written on it. So I will do it no justice in 10 minutes, but I'll give it my best. I guess the first observation I would make is the world is becoming more and more diverse to start with. I'll just use the Walt Disney Company for a second. We are a multinational company. We are everywhere. I just finished the call I had right before this was a call with London, where we were talking about a business in India. So, that's the world in which we're living is shrinking every year. And you're going to be working with more people from more cultures than you ever have in the past. So it's a reality of the world in which we live. So you just start with that. Companies will continue to reflect those trends. You know, I look at my team right now. So my team, well, before the Fox acquisition, my team's roughly 50-ish people, and roughly 60% of my team right now are women, and roughly, I would say, over 2/3 of the team would have a different race or ethnicity than a Caucasian, U.S. American. So 2/3 of the team. So diversity and inclusion is a prerequisite. We have to be inclusive, or else my team won't succeed. The Walt Disney doesn't succeed. In one of the jobs that I had with that I have had with the Walt Disney Company, I was finance for a few years, and one of my roles was actually working with HR and supporting the HR group on their budgets and their planning. One of the teams that we stood up during that time was a diversity team. And Jane Parker, who's our head of human resources, it always bothered her that diversity was part of HR, because she looked at diversity as it's a part of the business. It's not an HR initiative. Our whole business needs to be diverse and be inclusive. Being good at diversity, being a diverse company is a competitive advantage. And so we want to be diverse in our products. We wanted to be diverse in our experiences. And we need a diverse workforce in order to support all that. So I thought that was really good perspective as someone who always thought of diversity as an HR initiative. I thought that was really good. So, you know, I read a little bit about, you know, why the benefits. I prepped a little bit for this. I was reading through some Harvard Business articles, and 4 things that they talked about was a more diverse group is able to solve problems more effectively. They are able to reach more customers. Challenge the status. They do a better job of challenging the status quo, and therefore are more likely to develop more breakthroughs. Now, if you say, okay, why is that the case? I think it generally should be pretty obvious. You have more points of view that are able to attack the challenges that you have. You know, if I think through an easy parallel, I hire a lot of people that work for me. And if I look at 2 different resumes, and one resume, the person has worked within the same business for their entire career and only done one thing, and then I have a second resume where they've done a bunch of different things and had a broader array of experiences, I'm going to be more inclined to hire the second person because they bring more to the table with a broader skill set. If you think about a diverse team, you have the ability to bring all of those experiences kind of together in one spot. So I think the advantages of diversity, I think, are generally pretty obvious. So I guess that takes me to how do we encourage diversity? And I would start with the basic, hopefully for all of us, I think, in this room, and I can use it because we are a church school and we start with a prayer. I think this works. I mean, I think the starting point of being diverse and being inclusive is the fact that you realize that we are all children of a Heavenly Father, right? And if you start with that as your basis for everybody that you meet and you work with, there's a level of respect that has to come with that if you genuinely believe that. So kind of building from that, it's ultimately the golden rule. How do you treat others how you want to be treated? So one of the words that came up when you search diversity or common with diversity is being authentic. So, and I do believe this day and age, being authentic is a little overused, but it's the right word. Being authentic is showing a general caring for others. It's listening, showing a genuine interest, asking questions. It's being real and encouraging your team to also be real, to be themselves, to embrace who they are. And in order to do that, you have to show a genuine compassion and empathy for them. You know, at the Walt Disney Company, we have on our conference tables, at least in the ABC building, we've got 5 tips for conducting inclusive meetings. And I'll tell you what the 5 are, and we can we'll talk afterwards about why these are the 5 they picked. In order to be inclusive, they said number 1 is to share an agenda. 2, respect start and end times. 3, and this is where you start seeing things you'd expect, encourage everyone's participation. 4, give everyone equal opportunity to speak. And then 5, offer alternative outlets for employees to express their opinions after the meeting, including after the meeting. So it can be in the room or making sure you give somebody a chance afterwards to express themselves. Because sometimes in the meeting, certain cultures, different personality types aren't going to be comfortable in the meeting if there's 15 people in the room raising their hand and having an observation. So you've got to look for opportunities to hear their feedback. Now, why is that inclusive? To me, you look at that list, and a lot of it is about respect. It's respecting other people's time. You know, Joe mentioned be on time to meetings. If your staff is 5 minutes late, as a boss, you're always like, oh, they're disrespecting my time. In return, as a boss, if I'm always showing up 5 minutes late and expecting everyone else to be there, I'm saying I am more important than they are, and what I was doing was more important than what they had to do. So it works both directions. So the last point that I want to raise is, encouraging diversity is, they have something that's called developing cultural competence. And what that means is, it's really 2 things, I would say. One, it's being aware of your own shortcomings. We'll say biases is a word they use. I know we're not generally racist people, but it's knowing where you have shortcomings. I'll just give you one example. So my last boss, my former boss, she worked for the parks, worked for the Walt Disney Company 25 years, very seasoned exec, amazing, great person, really good at what she does. And with all the Me Too movement, one night I just asked, I'm like, hey, just curious, with all the Me Too stuff that we're hearing and seeing, have you, and share if you want, have you ever experienced anything at the Walt Disney Company? Has that ever been a problem? And her response was eye-opening for me. She said, no, for generally, when you think of Me Too things, it's a lot about the sexual harassment stuff. And she said, no, but what she did say is, that made me think about how do I interact with others. She's like, it's a lot of times, it's a boys club. Like the guys all have their sports, and I'll go into a ton of meetings, and the first 5 minutes is the banter about sports. And that's not my environment. I don't really enjoy them. I don't really care, but I'm left out of that relationship building. So one of the things that she said is just being aware of that. And I'm guilty. I knew my boss went to Michigan State. Another boss, both of our bosses, her boss. And so I'd go into meetings and I'd talk about the Michigan State basketball game, and it would immediately cut her out. So that's an example of being aware of something that you might do that may implicitly be exclusionary to others. Another example, or the second thing, was the ability to learn about and empathize with other viewpoints. And I think that includes learning about other cultures. And I think a lot of us, a lot of the folks at BYU, one of the advantages you have is having been on a mission. I'd say that's probably the most, well, from a business skills perspective, probably the most important thing you've learned, maybe besides hard work, is, if you've done it right, is you've learned how to work with other cultures and people that are not like yourselves. When I look at resumes from BYU students and they've jobified the mission, who have I led and instructions I've given, and sounds like work. To me, the very first thing is, if someone went to Brazil, I went to Brazil and I grew up in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, and now I'm in the barrios of Brazil, working with people that are completely unlike myself in a culture that's not like what I'm used to. And in that time, I learned how to talk to people and really care about people. To me, that skill is going to translate so much more into your career than a lot of the other, the fact that you had 10 missionaries to lead. So being culturally aware, developing, being sensitive, cultural competence, that's the word that they use. So I think that would be the last thing. I'll leave you on a quote from Walt Disney. And this was pre-diversity being really a word that was used much, but he had a quote where he said, I don't post as an authority at all. I follow the opinions of the ordinary people I meet, and I take pride in the close-knit teamwork within my organizations. I think if you keep that perspective, if you don't hold yourself out that I got all of this, and the way I become what I am, and Walt Disney, obviously, I guarantee you he was an authority on a lot of things. But I love that humility and the willingness to listen and to build teams that matter, that could create amazing, amazing things. So I'll turn it back to you, Joe.
All right, now I'm unmuted. So Jennifer, Joe, Dave, that was awesome. Thank you so much. It was really insightful. Hopefully very helpful to the audience. So we'll take questions now. Or we've got plenty of time for that. If you're in the room, Brian, Ali will go through you guys. If you are online and you go to your chat feature, you can send a question and Brian and I can see that and we'll try to work it into the mix here. So I'll turn it over to you to kind of work the room, see what we got.
Sounds great. So, oh, hi, okay. I'm up on the screen now. Does anybody have any questions? Start out with, we probably have time for about 10 minutes of questions. Yes.
What soft skill have BYU students in particular generally been lacking? What they've seen?
Okay. Do you want me to type this?
With that, or you can just
Oh,
tell
I'll
them.
just tell you. Okay. What soft skill have BYU students in general been lacking that we could be more familiar about?
Okay, good question. Joe, you want to tackle that one? And everyone can jump in here. I'm just going to kind of shoot it to someone, but do you all have thoughts?
Yeah, I think the BYU students, as David mentioned, have a kind of a unique perspective of being out in the world a little bit more than others. So I don't know if there's a weakness I would point out. I think it's a great value that the program has allowed you to, or the church and the culture we have has allowed you to demonstrate. I guess the one thing that a lot of the BYU students come to, I'm on the East Coast, and what I see is a lot of students who say, well, I want to get out of small town Utah and I want to be in a big city. And I think not knowing what they're getting into or knowing other than they want to get out of a small town is probably not always the best avenue to opening a new door. That would probably be the one perspective that I've had over the years of interviewing kind of consistently, 2 or 3 candidates every year that just come to the table without a real knowledge of what they're getting into.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in, and this is not BYU specific by any stretch. I think our BYU students that do come to Disney come with a lot of great skills. So I would say generally one of the things that new employees could work on is communication, and I'd say it's probably on the written side. If you think through a lot of the way we communicate today is via email, being able to articulate a short message that has the essence of the issue in short form is a great skill to have. Your managers, nowadays it's not unusual for me to have 150 emails a day. So for me to get through what you're sharing, with being able to share what you have in a concise manner that gets to the point quickly, that to me is a great skill. The quicker you develop that, the better it will be for you.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. And just one of the things that I also tell students when asked that question, and I believe it's the case with the number of universities. I think BYU is a perfect example, and where I went to school, Notre Dame, I think is another example. Universities like BYU and Notre Dame, you're surrounded by people that are very similar to you. And we are very much in a bubble for a period of time, an extended period of time. And the relationships that we have, the people that we meet, the friends that we have for our lives are very similar values to us. And what we have to recognize going into the workforce, regardless of where you are these days, is that the world is very different from, what NYU is like, what Notre Dame is like. You're going to meet a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds that have a lot and this goes to believing in God, not believing in God, and everything in between. So, we don't necessarily have to change our views, but we have to be respectful of other people's views. And that goes to everything that Dave talked about diversity and inclusion and being respectful of others. And I just think it's something that, I don't see it necessarily from the BYU community, but again, just going to a similar university, it's out there, and I think we just have to be mindful of it.
Hey, Joe, I'll add on to that as well, that I think that too, sometimes we feel like when someone says, hey, do you want to go for coffee? We're like, oh, well, I don't drink coffee. You don't have to explain that you don't drink coffee, right? So yeah, that would be great. Let's go have coffee, right? And you order a muffin. Do you know what I mean? I think sometimes that we feel like, oh, I have to stand out as a BYU student and defend my values. But you know what I mean? Also having that perspective of just being relatable and being able to socialize in a setting that you're not comfortable in. I think, like going to a cocktail party and being able to be comfortable in that setting. I think I've seen a lot of new BYU grads being really uncertain and uncomfortable in a setting where they feel like they're out of their comfort zone. Can I say that?
Yeah, great point. Great point.
Perfect.
Cool.
By the way, everyone is loving this. I know you can't see, but we love it. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
In terms of inclusion, do they have any advice on when you're the one maybe who may not be included?
Yes.
How to handle
Okay. So in speaking about diversity and inclusion, do you have any advice when you feel like you're not included, how to handle that situation?
Okay. Dave, you want to kick us off there?
Yeah, and I'll leverage what Jennifer started with a little bit. The first question I'd start with is, I wouldn't judge the other first. I'd start with a little bit of why about what am I doing? So I'd start the question pointing inward and saying, how can I be more open? To me, I've always felt a good way to bridge relationships is to ask people and listen. Ask them about them, show a genuine interest in them, and generally speaking, folks will open up. People love talking about themselves. Now there's some people that won't reciprocate, to be fair, and may not ask you about you, but I think it's a great starting point. And it's looking for common ground wherever you can. To Jen's great anecdote on the Starbucks, look for whatever opportunities you can to build a relationship. And it could be in any setting. It could be at work when you're working. It could be when they just take a break. What are you doing to put yourself out there to be part of the team? Make sure that you're open. And that honestly, that's where I'd start.
Thoughts? Anyone have any other thoughts? What? Any others in the room?
I'll go ahead and answer to that, because I think there can be lots of reasons why you don't feel included, and some of it could be I think I didn't really want to add on to Dave's because I think he said it perfectly, of making sure that you're not just internalizing because maybe you don't like basketball and everybody else likes basketball, so you feel like you're being excluded. Well, maybe you should watch some basketball game. You know what I mean? You want to be included, then look for ways. If it's something that you feel like you're being purposely excluded, then you need to look for ways to stand up for yourself and defend yourself. Whether it's, and luckily in my career, I've never felt left out because I was a woman. I think I've picked firms to work at that I felt were very inclusive to women and supportive of women. But that, if you are a woman or if you are a minority of some other kind, you can feel like you're in a place where you are being excluded. And if it is something that's beyond trying to feel included or involved in develop relationships with other people, then you want to look for someone who's a mentor who can help you work through that, whether it's inside or outside of your own organization. And if it is something that's hostile that you can't resolve, then maybe you want to look for another opportunity. I just want to throw that out there.
And I think to Jen's point too, a lot of times it can be unintended and ignorant. When you're the new face and they've already got a team that's built and experienced and they're happy and good, do they need another friend? Some of it, they just could be unaware. So I think you can start with the conversation if it's a manager or whoever it is where you don't feel, say, hey, is everything, are we good here? I think you can have a first dialogue there, but to the extent it doesn't pan out, I think then seeking other help, as Jen mentioned, is the right approach.
And I also do think that, and what you'll find, we've all grown up, right? I mean, whether it be high school cliques or college cliques, so again, you're going to connect with people that, again, are similar to you, have the same interests. But what you find in the workforce is the cliques kind of go out the window. There's really no more of this concept of, if you don't like basketball, that's fine. You don't like basketball. People actually don't really care, and again, just sticking on the basketball, scenario here. It doesn't matter. What they're looking for is someone that is a nice person, like everything that Jennifer was talking about. Is a nice person, is energetic, is excited to be there, is proactive, is really going to be that team player. Like that's first and foremost. Like, do they like you? Do they want you to be on their team? All that other stuff is really just, it's a little bit noise in the system. And so if you put that forward, if you put yourself forward, yourself, who you are, be yourself. The rest of it really is a little less relevant. Some of these other things that kind of occur in the workforce, they're less relevant now than they were, growing up, let's say. What you guys are still doing, what we.
Hey, I'm not grown up yet.
Awesome. We have another question.
What is your advice for building a good relationship?
Advice on building a good relationship with supervisors.
Okay, Jennifer, you want to start off?
Sure. Well, I think that kind of to what Joe was talking about earlier, the best way to develop a good relationship with your supervisor is to respect them, respect their time, and respect them by bringing your best, right? I mean, you obviously, that's going to be the foundation of your relationship, is your work product, right? But then obviously you want to be relatable to them, find out what they're interested in, have a coffee, you know what I mean? Go do those things outside of work where they can get to know you and appreciate you, but they're going to want to appreciate you more if they appreciate what you're doing at work, and if they see an effort of you making that progress.
Yeah, I would echo the same. It really comes down to, finding some element on a personal level where you can relate, and then taking interest in that, and not just a passing comment, but more of a sustained, whether it's about their children or their dog or their family, what they eat on the weekends. There's something where you could develop something at a very personal level and have it be a sustained conversation. I think that goes a long way. And then it has to be followed up with a good work product. If you do those two things, you'll distinguish yourself in the eyes of your supervisor well.
And I'd just add to that as well. Just be genuine, though. I mean, everyone can see through if you're just trying to get in good with the boss. I mean, your work product, the values, the personality, everything that BYU has afforded you, and the lessons that you've learned there, take them into the workforce. Be genuine, and balance that work product and what you deliver from a technical and a work perspective, and that personal side, and you're going to be fine.
You've given us everything we need to know.
Okay. All right. Well, we're not going anywhere. So, like we've always said in wrapping up the other webinars or really any discussions that all of us have had with students in groups or one-on-one. We really do enjoy this. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you. We thought that these were a good way to reach a lot of you at once. But we are always available to speak more personally, one-on-one, or otherwise. So, please, if you have any follow-up questions or anything in particular as it relates to both the opportunities that are ahead of you, whether it be career or some of these things that we talked about today, these softer skills, let us know. Work through Brian. Brian coordinates with all of us to make sure that you're matched up with the right person, given your questions and the things that you want to discuss. And again, we're here to help. That's our purpose as a broader board, but specifically as this committee. We're here to interact with you. And so please, leverage us wherever you can. So again, thank you all very much. Thank you to Jennifer, Joe, and Dave. Brian, thank you for coordinating. Allie, thank you for coordinating. And I'm sure we'll see you on campus in a couple months.